Hello and welcome to another reaction stream, and today, at last maybe, I will be able to do this stream, the summer or reaction stream. I was planning to do a couple, hopefully we'll do a couple, but yeah, the main reason I'm seeing family is that it's been a week and a half trying to do this. Like a week and a half ago I tried to do one, but I had to stop after one video because I was feeling sick. Then 2 days later I tried again, and I was even more sick, so I basically just deleted the VOD. It was really just like 30 minutes of me struggling, and today I am not sick, so finally we can do one. So yeah, the idea is simple. I put a little playlist of videos that are like true crime / horror related, because it is summer and you know, like people watch horror movies or you know, watch like creepy videos I guess. So I figured it would kind of be fun to do a stream like this. Of course, you know, in 2 months is October, so I'll be doing a lot of that in October, but yeah, we're getting a little taste with maybe like 2 or 3 streamers, you know, in August. So this is the first one. As always, all the videos we're gonna watch are linked in the description. There's also timestamps if you're watching the VOD. There's a link to my Discord, Stream Element, Patreon, if you want to follow, support me, request reaction. We're checking out some channels I already know, like Kyoto, Lobato, and Sky Interesting, which are channels I like, and then some channels I don't know, so we'll have to discover if they're good. But yeah, I try to put a playlist that seems to cover like different topics. First one is Japan, second one is like a castle, so maybe Europe. Third one is about like Taiwan. Fourth one is about Arabic internet. So again, I try to put in a bit more variety than my recent stream, which is like all Japan focused. So yeah, hopefully this is fun, and if you guys have any channel or video recommendation, don't hesitate. I might add them for my next playlist. I think I'll do another stream like that next week, so don't hesitate. But yeah, let's get into things. BGM off. The first one is Seito Sakakibara's website, Window into a Murder by Kyoto Lobato. Disturbing content, I mean, yeah. Fair enough. Subtitles English to Nihongo, please, for my Japanese viewers to be able to follow along.
For some very evil people who commit the most heinous acts upon the innocent, their terrible deeds are not enough to satisfy themselves. Their ego, their vanity, their desire for attention is something so strong that they brazenly create forms of media like books, art, or websites to display their twisted ways of thinking, regardless of how the victims' families feel. In 2015, a man commonly known online as Seito Sakakibara, one of Japan's most notorious and despicable murderers, created a disturbing website a few months after his controversial book was released, both shocking and fascinating the country, who caught a glimpse into the mind of a monster. Okay. This is the true story of Sonzai no Taerarenai Tomesa.
That's the name?
If you've been a viewer of the channel for a while, you'll know that I typically create in-depth video essays, but sometimes I like to expand my content and make something new about Japan for you to enjoy. This video is still true crime adjacent, but will be less info heavy, focusing more on what I see posted to a weird website. Still, if you're a returning viewer or someone new to the channel, welcome. I make videos on Japanese cases, strange, solved and unsolved.
Yeah, I've recommended this channel for a couple of years. I've watched quite a few of their like true crime documentary basically. They have many great ones, and they're just super interesting. I mean, morbid curiosity, right? But super interesting.
If that sounds like something you think you'll find interesting, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. In any case, let's get on with the video. The Sakakibara incident refers to a series of indiscriminate attacks in the city of Kobe in 1997, committed by a then 14-year-old boy who called himself Seito Sakakibara, but was known in the media as Boy A. The case shocked the nation due to the perpetrator's age, the merciless brutality of the crimes, and the taunting letters he sent to the media and authorities that was akin to the Zodiac from the US. Beginning on the 10th of February 1997, Sakakibara assailed two 12-year-old girls completely unprovoked with a hammer. While the
Of course, he has tax of the week. Not surprised. And I can already see where this is going. He's underage, so by 18 or 21, whatever, they just let him out, and then he can just make a book profiting from his crimes.
They were wounded. Both victims fortunately survived. In the following month, on the 16th of March 1997, he attacked Ayaka Yamashita, also with a hammer, causing fatal injuries for which she sadly passed away a week later. Just 10 minutes later, he additionally attacked another girl using a sharp implement, but she luckily survived. If these horrible incidents weren't enough, things took an even more sinister, dark turn. On the 24th of May 1997, Sakakibara encountered Jun Hase, a special needs student, in the street. Sakakibara lured Jun to
I think we might have watched a video on this case once, because it feels a little bit familiar. Yeah.
a location known as Tank Mountain under the pretense of showing Jun a turtle. And there, using Jun's own shoelaces around the victim's neck, Sakakibara, without mercy, without reason, without any sympathy, took his life. But Sakakibara's demented deeds didn't end there. He took Jun's head, placed it on the gate of Tomogaoka Junior High School in order to try and shock other students, and inserted a taunting letter to police, similar to Zodiac, in his mouth. Sakakibara, who thought highly of his own intelligence, believed the authorities wouldn't find him since they initially investigated under the belief that an adult committed the crimes. This led Sakakibara to further write to the authorities on the 6th of June, but on the 28th of the same month, officers showed up to his door and took him in for questioning. He initially denied involvement before eventually confessing, and after psychiatric tests, he was considered to be of sound mind and therefore responsible for what he had done, despite revealing many scary things about himself. However, at just 14, he was unfortunately not placed.
I never have quite the understanding of what it takes to be declared insane, you know? You always hear about like someone doing terrible things and then wanting to be declared insane to not go to normal prison, but I guess go to like mental hospital, right? And I have no idea what like sometimes it's pretty obvious, right? I mean, a doctor can say, you know, you have schizophrenia, you have this, you have that, right? But sometimes it feels like it's a lot more abstract, right? Like whether someone is insane or not. I mean, it's probably too deep for me to really understand what defines someone as insane. Because, you know, you killed a little kid and cut off his head. To me, that's insane. You're insane. But I guess not. They don't judge him insane.
Placed into prison, and on the 13th of October 1997, he was instead given a very light punishment in a juvenile detention facility where he gloated about his deeds to others. He remained there until he became 18, all the while deceiving the naive doctors and officials with his cunning nature, making them believe he had been rehabilitated. In November 2001, he was transferred to another detention facility for young adults before being unwisely and cruelly released back into society in 2004, complete with a new identity and a clean slate to enjoy a life after robbing others of theirs. He initially kept a low profile, hiding behind his anonymity.
But again, I think it's not just Japan. A lot of countries have this exact problem of, you know, juvenile laws, which always depend, right? In some countries, like under 16, under 14, under 15, you're considered like a kid. And so if you commit terrible crime, the consequences you face will be greatly diminished. Often it's only like, you know, a couple of years of rehabilitation until you turn like legal, whatever. What's the word for like turning adult? And then they just release them. About like a case of like 2 kids who killed the baby on train tracks in the UK or something. And I think there was controversy because the same thing happened. Like they got lenient punishment, and eventually when they became adults, they were allowed to like change their name and try to live a normal life, you know. And again, there's always like argument to be made, right? I mean, when someone is like ultra young and do something fucked up, you know, are they insane, or was it a mistake of just not understanding, of like bad parenting, so they never developed empathy? So can they genuinely be like turned into a normal person, right? Like if it's a little kid that literally was never taught empathy, but then through the rehabilitation, it seems like they finally have been taught empathy, so like they shouldn't want to kill anything anymore. You know, like what's the solution otherwise? Leave them behind the bar for the rest of their life? Yeah, I kind of think so. I kind of think that should be what happens. You know, I mean it's complicated. This whole thing is like an ultra complicated subject.
However, in June 2015, Sakakibara released an autobiography titled Zekka, in which he described his foul deeds in graphic and extremely disrespectful ways, showing way more pride than remorse in what he had done. The publishing company, Orta Publishing, known for taking on controversial books, came under extremely heavy criticism from the general public and especially Jun Hase's family, who described Sakakibara as willfully defying their wishes and inflicting further trauma, severely limiting their ability to heal.
I mean, like, can you even argue with that, right? Seriously, you barely fetched any punishment, and now you're coming into the limelight writing a book to make money of murdering this little kid?
While not banned as some people have claimed, further publication was pressured to stop despite becoming a bestseller, and stores refused to stock it. A few months later, Sakakibara set up a website titled Sonzai no Taerarenai Tomesa, or in English, The Unbearable Transparency of Existence. There, he posted bizarre images of himself in his artwork that caused further controversy and proved that his so-called rehabilitation had failed. Instead of feeling repentant or guilty for his crimes, he relished them. While it was shut down after further backlash, it can still be viewed via the Wayback Machine. Fortunately, because it is long gone, Sakakibara can no longer feel satisfaction of seeing people's comments or receiving emails. The website first appears quite plain, somewhat boring and amateur, especially given that it was created in 2015, so it could have been a bit more appealing. In the top left it says,
I mean, I don't know how to make a website. It would probably look worse than this if I did it.
Former Boy A's official homepage, The Unbearable Transparency of Existence. As touched on, since he couldn't be named because of legal reasons when the incident took place, the authorities and media referred to him as Boy A. In the top right there are a series of tabs leading to different pages: Home, which we are on right now, Gallery, Reviews, and Email. We'll take a look at those later. What was likely the thing that immediately caught your attention was the title card of sorts. It features the name of the website that I already explained, but also shows something in the background, a pair of feet. If you know Japanese society well or have worked in Japanese schools, you will know that these blue sandals are worn by young school students, especially in junior high. They are the feet of the criminal, Sakakibara, the only part of the perpetrator filmed by the media during the news coverage, and it became quite famous as a result. Scrolling down below, we have Sakakibara's self-made profile. 1982, born in Kobe. 1997, committed the Kobe child murders, the Sakakibara incident, and entered a juvenile detention facility. 2004, my 6 years and 5 months at the juvenile detention facility ended, and I rejoined society. Yes, for his twisted, sick actions on innocent victims, he was only held for 6.5 years, and in a detention facility no less, where it is much easier for him since it lacked many of the restrictions in place in prisons. I understand he was only 14 years old at the time, but if you read about his crimes in depth, you'll understand exactly why this is such a shocking revelation. He goes on to write about his physical features, claiming to be 165.6 centimeters tall and weighing 54.3 kilograms. His eyesight, or decimal visual acuity, is 0.03 for his right eye and 0.05 for his left. He has blood type A, and he writes that he has heart murmurs in his aortic area. He claims to have an INFJ personality type and links to a Japanese website detailing what that means. This is considered to be the rarest type, representing only 1.5 to 2% of the global population.
I took the test once, but I forget what I got. Probably a classic introvert, shy one.
According to the 16 Personalities website, many INFJs see helping others as their mission in life, and they always look for ways to step in and speak for what is right. They are also known for being very empathetic and being motivated to help others. All traits which completely defy Sakakibara's actions and go completely against who he is. So I question the validity of this point. The final part of the profile is, I have delusions of grandeur. In other words, he admits he's a narcissist, overestimates his abilities and importance, and talks in an exaggerated and unrealistic way. This is already apparent, but his arrogance will grow the more we look into him. He then goes on to write about his book, Zekka, which at the time was still being published. He writes that while many books have been published on the case, this is the first and last book in which he himself will speak through his own words. He claims he poured his heart and soul into revealing his innermost thoughts on the incident, the victims, and his life after he reintegrated into society, much of which he has never shared before, even to the authorities. He states that his book reveals his true self, the being behind the, quote, ruthless and heartless monster he claims the media made him seem. Personally, I think his actions
You cut off a little boy's head, my dear.
showed the media to be correct. He ends his shameless self-promotion with hopes that as many people read it as possible, and that if you want to know and understand him, this is the only book that will provide answers. And finally, he ends with some supplementary information, claiming that he doesn't use social media like Twitter and Facebook, and this website is the only place he is present online. However, he further states that should he decide to write something elsewhere, he will announce it on this website. He signs off at the bottom with Former Boy A, the same pen name as his book. And that's it for the homepage, save for the website
Wait, so how do we know his name then? Seito Sakakibara? I guess it was leaked eventually.
server information at the bottom that is of no relevance to us. With that being all that the homepage has to offer, let's move on to the gallery tab. I would like to take this moment to once again warn you that some may find the images, descriptions, and artwork shown from this point on to be very disturbing, so viewer discretion is strongly advised. It begins with a line of text. I've posted graphics I created as a hobby. Click on the large images to see the full image. But you're not concerned about that, because your eyes are already on the first drawing below. It's a drawing of a slug, but the eye stalks, also known as upper tentacles, are enlarged. In place of the eyes are two human-like faces. One appears angry, the other sad. Below the drawing is a quote taken from his book.
The art is actually good.
If there was such a thing as a mental creature, the counterpart to a mental landscape, then the slug, imperfect, feeble, repulsive, and despised by everyone, would, without a doubt, be mine. Zekka, page 49. I actually have a used copy of his book I purchased at a second-hand bookstore, and so I can actually look at the corresponding passage. Don't worry, since it was not a new copy and the book has long been out of print and removed from shelves, he didn't get a single yen from my purchase. He actually got the page number wrong, and it is page 50 where this quote.
I mean, if there's like, if there's ever an argument that pirating something, is like morally good, I think this is probably like the ultimate one, right? Pirating, like the book of a killer, yeah. I was gonna say Mein Kampf, but probably not, because Mein Kampf, I assume, obviously like no one bad is making money from it. I very much assume that like whoever is publishing Mein Kampf might be some kind of a Jewish society or group who the profit probably go toward all that, right? Because obviously the point of Mein Kampf is that people know the thoughts of the madman,
Is placed. In this section of the book, Sakakibara talks about collecting slugs. He would put them inside clean marmalade jars, sit under his bed covers, and use a light to shine in their translucent bodies so he could catch a glimpse of how they were inside. He felt that their timid nature and eyes were like his own, But this fascination extended to dissecting them alive, because he wanted to, quote, feel the life in them, which gave him pleasure. This toying with them here, even though he states he didn't want to see the slugs die, is solid proof that he is a very disturbed individual. Many violent individuals
That's a classic, obviously, yeah.
begin by harming animals in their adolescence before moving on to people, and Sakakibara had a long history of harming animals like insects and dozens of cats. Scrolling down, we see another slug, which you may now realize is a common theme with Sakakibara. This one is crying and has enlarged eyes. He has also made colored versions of this with a background. I can't tell what the background is, but when I first saw it, it looked like a zoomed in shot of some human skin. Next seems to be a photograph of a physical drawing of an insect, maybe a cockroach. However, it has human-like hands and feet. Below is one more in the style of a calligraphy drawing with brushstrokes. And finally, the same thing with 3 variations, both fully covered. For me, the last one, which is colored both red and black, is most striking. Next is a series of similar drawings, except this time it's a centipede, and there isn't much variation with the colors.
Okay.
Like the other insect, this one has human-like hands and feet, and is praying. I wonder if the antennae are supposed to have bows in them, like those tied in hair.
I hate
The
that the
background
art
appears
again
to be
is
a couple of
kind of
very
good, like there's
generic
something to
ones.
it.
There's another series of the same drawing, except as the sentence describes, the width of the head has changed to be slightly narrower, and the centipede color is slightly darker, going from orange to red. We then get another quote from his book. I think I probably had a very strong desire to return to the womb since I was a child. Zeka, page 66. Going to this page in the book, Sakakibara describes how he would create a mountain of stuffed animals around his futon and sleep with the curtains drawn all day. Although he believed it was strange for a boy of his age to sleep surrounded by stuffed animals, he felt as though he was creating a pseudo-womb space so that he could shut out external stimuli. It comforted him to do this. Sakakibara claims that his desire to return to the womb is closely tied to his death drive, as he calls it, or wish to cease to exist. It appears that Sakakibara wished at the time to withdraw from society, and combined with his fascination for harming animals, clearly had an effect on his mental well-being. Below this we have a style.
So he had mental issues, I mean, no surprise, yeah. As always, we don't know any details, I don't want to just right away jump to the conclusion that the family was the problem, right? Even though that's the first thing you think about, right? Like, either they were the cause of him being like this, and if they weren't, they clearly didn't do anything about it, whether they knew, whether they didn't notice. It's hard to not feel like the family probably takes, the parents probably takes a big part of the blame on all this, even though we don't have any details, right? So,
stylized drawing of what looks like a human fetus. It has a very large head, but that seems to be common with real early fetuses too. The hands and feet are in the same style as the previous insect drawings. Sakakibara creates numerous pieces using this design, but with different colors. This colored one in particular even hurts my eyes to look at for some reason. Maybe it's something to do with the bright contrasting colors. I'm not sure, but maybe this is supposed to represent Sakakibara himself. We then see what appears to be something like a strange tree. It stands on its roots in a pool or pond. We see the praying centipede from before, as well as the slug. It seems the branches are shooting out liquid into the air, both as droplets and pouring out like a waterfall. I guess that means the pool that the tree is on is made from this liquid. There is a gap in the tree with nothing in it, but if we scroll down, we find a similar image with less liquid, but the fetus drawing is now in the gap of the tree. This is clearly a photograph of a physical drawing like the one before and others, but he made a digital version too, before finally making a colored version below. There is also a quote from his book. By the edge of Irezumi Pond stood a large tree, and at its base was a large hollow shaped like a female private area. The tree trunk, which jutted diagonally towards the surface of the pond, grew thicker towards the top, and its unnatural shape was reminiscent of a male private area. Male and female private areas. Adam and Eve. Using my favorite anagram, I arbitrarily named this tree Aedavamu, Tree of
Okay.
Life, and cherished it. Zekka, page 31. Turning to this page in the book, Sakakibara makes out that
It feels like, you know, the kind of stuff that, again, would be... It could have been some kind of very fringe, weird artist, you know, obviously, without the killing, right? I almost want to say he has some talent for this, like some of this design and drawings, you know. Though obviously, the fact that he did what he did automatically just make you look at this in a different way, right?
the pond is somewhat sacred to him or has a spiritual meaning. He writes about the unnatural contrast of the artificial town with the overgrown nature of the pond, claiming that this duality may have fostered his Jekyll and Hyde traits. He observed the real tree from his drawings while listening to The Planet of June or Suna no Wakusei by Yumi Matsuyota on a portable CD player and smoking a red Marlboro, which he described as his staple food. It is a moment of bliss for him, but also a moment when he cries. Sakakibara further claims in his book that the pond symbolizes the womb for him, and that song feels like his mother's heartbeat when he was in her womb. He feels The Planet of June gives him an unparalleled sense of security, as if he is returning to the womb completely. This tree is part of a very dark aspect of Sakakibara's very real crimes, however. You see, the hollow in the tree is the place where Sakakibara had, for a time, hidden Jun Hase's head. This image was truly disturbing to discover when I looked at this website.
Damn.
After taking innocent Jun's life, he returned to the scene of the crime a day later to claim the head. Shockingly, he actually did so, placed it in the tree for him to, and I quote, admire it slowly in a place no one would see him. When I first read of how he described these acts, I was at a complete loss for words, and it is one of the most distressing things I've ever had the displeasure to read, and to see this brash drawing makes me sick to my stomach. I'm not sure what Sakakibara is trying to say with these drawings.
Again, they deemed him okay to go back to society. Great.
Maybe he's trying to say that he was reborn through his horrible acts by drawing the fetus where Jun's head was placed. I honestly don't know at all, but what I can say now is that this is absolutely disgusting, and he should truly feel ashamed for his drawing. He clearly feels zero remorse for his terrible crimes and has no sympathy for the victims' families. This genuinely makes me mad.
Psychopath.
Next, we see the title of a new section of the gallery, Self-Portrait Series. And here is Sakakibara. It's truly him, his face covered like the coward he is with a large black bandana, upon which are two symbols, a crescent moon and a sun, drawn in black and white circles, as you can see more clearly beside his selfie. Sakakibara has admitted he is extremely vain and narcissistic, and this feeds into his physical appearance too. He takes a lot of pride in his muscular form, and so creates many opportunities to display that in his self-portrait section, some of which I will need to block out for the video. We then have another quote from his book. Climaxing was always accompanied by intense pain. This continued into later years, and the only thing I ever mentioned to a psychiatrist was that climaxing was accompanied by intense pain. The psychiatrist said it was an expression of guilt about S urges. Zekka, page 49. Given the nature of this subject, I cannot delve into too much detail, but going to this part of the book, it describes the first time that Sakakibara performed, well, self-pleasure, and how he passed out upon doing so while feeling pain.
I know I'm always complaining about it, but man, I hate when on YouTube so much. It's a video about a guy who cut off the head of a little boy, and yet saying masturbation is too much. I hate modern YouTube. I don't blame the YouTuber, of course. I know how it is.
It seems to be written to elicit sympathy from the reader. If we scroll down, he has a visual representation of this. I have to block this out because it's quite obscene, but again, we have Sakakibara lying down. He's without clothes and the bandana covers his face. Coming out from between his legs is a chest burster from the movie Alien.
That's what it looks like.
I suppose this is meant to represent the aforementioned feelings of pleasure coming together with pain. Next we have Sakakibara attached to the body of a scorpion, and his hands are replaced with the pincers too. Other than it being a bit weird, I'm not sure if it's supposed to signify something in particular. It seems he's doing his best to tense his abdominal muscles to make himself look more defined though. Again, his face is covered by the bandana. If we scroll down more, we have something else obscene that I must again block out. It is Sakakibara from behind, riding atop a large slug that is leaving a trail of mucus. He is again without clothes. There is some text next to him. There is no road in front of me. A road forms behind me. Ah, nature. Mother, vast mother, who made me stand alone, do not take your eyes off me. Protect me. Always fill me with your spirit. For this long journey ahead. For this long journey ahead. This is actually a poem called Dotte from Kotaro Takamura, a famous poet and sculptor. However, one word has been changed. In the original, it was father, but here, Sakakibara has changed it to mother. I feel this is significant, as Sakakibara often writes about his mother, who he claims, without concrete evidence, was strict and was not so loving towards him during his upbringing. The meaning of the poem is to stop following others, but carve your own path in life. I suppose this is a statement that Sakakibara wishes to move away from his past crimes and mother and continue alone, making a new life for himself. Next there is a photo of Sakakibara holding a light, possibly a match. He is still wearing his bandana to hide his face. It has a blue filter over the top, and the background features a strange pattern that seems to encroach over his chest too. He has mentioned that he smoked in his book, but I can't tell if he's smoking here. Again, another image I have to block out, but Sakakibara is in the fetal position and without clothes. Given the oval pink shape in the background, I guess this is supposed to represent him in the womb, as he has expressed that this is where...
I'm obviously no psychiatrist, but I think this guy isn't right. I actually would say a reaction to this video by a psychiatrist would be interesting. Yeah.
He would like to return to. Just very weird stuff all around, and I wonder what was going through his head when he made these. Moving further down the page, we have what is our first look at his face on the site. Well, as much of it as we can see, given that it is heavily distorted. He appears to be screaming and even smiling a little, has a large heart over his chest made of slugs, and has lumps of slugs in various colours hanging around him. The background is dark with a seemingly random pattern on it. Maybe it's supposed to represent space. Sakakibara is wearing something this time, a black top. There's not really so much to say about it, other than it's disgusting and strange really. Maybe the slugs for his heart represents his love for the things, or maybe it's supposed to say slugs are a part of him, but who knows. Just under we have a similar image, except Sakakibara has been edited out and replaced with a strange humanoid figure. The singular...
All this kind of visuals feels like kind of stuff you'd find in some artsy, cheap Steam horror game, basically.
The vertical eye, however, is real, and I personally think that this is Sakakibara's own eye that he has added, but I can't be sure. The figure has a neutral expression and his hands are clasping his head. Maybe it represents clasping the head in pain. The top of the head also looks like the earth too, but this could be a result of the filters and quality. Scrolling down, we enter into a new section titled Making of. Here is where he discusses and shows the making of the last two images that incorporated real slugs. Again, I will warn you that the following is very disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised. Sakakibara writes, "Here's a small peek behind the scenes of the creation of the piece that required the most amount of time and effort to complete. During the Edo period ukiyo-e prints, there was a technique called yosei, composite pictures, where a dense number of figures are used to depict faces of people and cats. I think everyone has seen it at least once. Inspired, I wanted to see what would happen if I used slugs for yosei, so I tried it. However, the model gathering and photography process was far more exhausting than the image processing itself. In my neighborhood, there is a spot where I can catch slugs, so every time it rained, I'd go there with tweezers and a glass jar, scouting for slugs crawling on the walls. While collecting them was easy, they were hard to keep alive. Even with careful attention to food and water, they usually don't survive a week. When the number dwindled, I'd go slug hunting again. Once I gathered 10 to 20 of them, I'd have a photo shoot with my iPhone 5S camera before they passed away. I stopped counting halfway through, but I think I got at least 100 in total. Of course, when I took photos, I made sure to offer words to boost their morale. You're great. Your antennae are sexy. You're especially slimy today. Yes, yes, open your breathing holes as wide as you can. It was a grueling process,
Okay.
but the joy of completing it was all the greater because of it.
This almost feels like a parody now. Okay.
That last line's especially disturbing because it is the exact same thing he said about his murder of Jun Hase. Below we have images of his process along with text. First, I had to start by creating the set. I really wanted footage of a huge horde of slugs crawling out of the heart-shaped indentation, so I punched a hole in a heart-shaped soap case from a 100-yen store, fitted it into a cardboard cutout that followed the outline of a heart, spray painted the surface black to enhance the slug's texture, and secured a plastic bottle waiting room behind it with tape. It looks like this from below. We then get a series of photographs showing slugs crawling through the hole. He further writes, once the last one enters the stage, it's time for the main event, the final catwalk for all the models. From here, the excitement really starts to build. The following seems a little too repulsive to show and
It's really like, almost like stereotype, right? I mean, so the thing he says, the type of art he makes, is obsessed with fucking slugs or whole thing. Like, you know, if I were to write a generic like horror movie with some kind of serial killer, this is what I would write about the serial killer, right? I mean, it's crazy how almost stereotype it is, yeah?
So I'll skip ahead a little, but to give you an idea, there are many images of slugs in this heart-shaped soap container, and it gets covered in mucus. Basically, more of the images you see here just dialed up. I will show what Sakakibara claims is his favorite photo though, this one, of two slugs converging on each other. Sakakibara writes, "This is my favorite photo. I couldn't direct this pose. The difference in color between the slugs, as well as the way they overlap, made this miraculous shot. I managed to capture it after patiently waiting for something like this. I used it as the center image for the finished piece, which, if we scroll down, yeah, he did. It's the same heart as the one we saw before, except larger of course. Honestly, this is quite an out there thing to do, and shows that Sakakibara is a very disturbed individual. He continues to gloat, relish in his crimes, and harm animals. Were he truly reformed, I doubt he'd be acting in such a way."
Right, I mean, seriously. I could believe that maybe in his insanity he was smart enough to act normal, to get released. So, you know, on one side you can blame the people who assessed him, but also like, it's not that easy, right? I mean, if someone's really good at lying and acting normal, how can they tell, right? Until he's released and he clearly shows that it wasn't true, but then can the law do anything about that? Can they say, oh, actually, clearly you lied, so let's send you back to prison? I guess the law doesn't really work like that, but it's still fucked up.
Underneath his heart slug picture is more text. The design of the heart took 2 months. During this time I couldn't stop thinking about slugs, day and night. As I neared completion, I was hit with withdrawal symptoms so severe that even grains of rice looked like slugs to me. After finishing this piece, I realized something. Though they may seem imperfect at first glance, if you change your perspective, there is no creature more perfectly crafted than a slug. Just think about it. An oval shape with 2 antennae attached. A simple, completely streamlined form that could be drawn in 3 seconds. Yet is there any other creature that invokes such revulsion in people? I think slugs are, in a sense, the ultimate expression of design, perfectly calculated solely to invoke revulsion in humans. The fact that he feels so-called withdrawal from slugs when completing his artwork using them is quite a statement, and I wonder how deprived his fascination with them goes. I also find it telling how he compares himself to a slug a few times here and in his book, but then claims in this passage that there is no creature more perfectly crafted than one. Anyway, that is the end of the gallery.
Alright.
Not really a nice thing to look at, and I find the drawing of the tree particularly disturbing, given that it is directly linked to his real-life horrible deeds. But I get the strong impression that Sakakibara has a desperate need for attention, and perhaps hiding all this time since his crimes was too much for such a narcissist. He tries to portray himself as the victim when he talks about pain and feeling the need to return to the womb. I think he made these disturbing pieces of art knowing that they were disturbing and would receive backlash, because perhaps that gives him the power he desires. If we return to the tabs at the top, there are 2 more reviews in the email. Let's take a look at the reviews one. We are presented with a wall of text. It's a series of film and book reviews by Sakakibara, and while there is a lot of info written down, it is mostly summaries, and so there's not too much to say about it. The first review is the movie Watch Me. The plot follows Shigeki, who falls in love with a sick girl, Yayoi, living in an apartment across the hill. He and his father buy a telescope, and Shigeki spends decades observing her from afar. As adults, they both marry and have children with other people, but Shigeki continues to watch Yayoi nightly. Sakakibara praises the film's restrained acting, camera work, and its quiet, pure depiction of love and human distance. He admires the film's quiet power and subtlety, moved by the ways people hold on to one another without words. It seems he dislikes overt declarations of feelings and admires indirect expressions of love instead. Below this is a review of the book Nikufure by author Sato Chika. The novel opens with visceral, bodily imagery and follows an emotionally unstable office worker.
I was gonna say, I assume his reviews are not just, mainstream, he's not a fan of Spider-Man or something.
Narrated in first person, who returns home after his father's death and drifts into an aimless trip. In a rural inn, he meets a talking cat that becomes his companion and engages him in repeated debates about whether body or mind matters more for life and survival. There is a key episode detailing an impulsive childhood runaway in which the sister and narrator eat roadside grass and snails, which captures the book's existential emptiness, which, as you can imagine, is something that Sakakibara enjoyed reading a lot. Sakakibara seems to respond strongly to scenes of childhood vulnerability and body imagery. The third review is another book one for Higeo Saraba by Ueno Ryo. The story focuses on a memory-lost cat named Yogoroza, who meets a one-eyed stray called Katame. Together they build a feline community and fight for territory against dogs and rats. Through survival struggles, the cat gradually recovers its memories. Its former owner, an elderly woman, set fire to the room while holding the cat, and the cat escaped after clawing her. Sakakibara claims he was traumatized by this book when he read it in the juvenile detention facility. Like the previous book, this one had a cat in it, and I wonder if this relates to how Sakakibara used to end the lives of stray cats during his youth. I also wonder if he felt connected to the story because he felt the old woman was close to his own grandmother.
I was gonna say, I'm sure there's a massive amount of stuff that we can only guess at, but we don't have the context on the way he feels about, the specific scenarios.
The next review is of Nighthead, a novelization of a late-night drama of the same name, about 2 psychic brothers who escape from a research facility to discover why they exist and what their powers mean. Sakakibara read both of these in juvenile detention, and while he doesn't like sci-fi or psychic genres, he claims he was gripped by the depictions of human darkness and very realistic portrayals of human cruelty in this series of books. Sakakibara said he reacted physically to descriptions of violence, saying he got, quote, goosebumps, which could be a reaction to his desire to commit violent acts on others again, which makes the fact that he is roaming around free even more troubling.
Yeah.
For the next section, Sakakibara details another terrible person, Issei Sagawa.
Is it the cannibal guy?
Issei was from Kobe too, and in 1981, while studying as an exchange student in
That's
Paris,
the guy.
Issei took the life of René Hartevelt
Doesn't he have the same story of like eventually being released and making money off a book?
before cannibalizing parts of her. Like Sakakibara, Issei got off lightly with his terrible crimes and also relished the attention of others. Issei made media appearances and wrote books where he boasted of his terrible crimes, which made Sakakibara jealous. Sakakibara too wanted to show off, but because he had to stay anonymous, he couldn't. Sakakibara's jealousy turned to anger towards Issei because he too wanted to profit from his crimes and gain recognition. However, Sakakibara claims that the more he watched of Issei and read about him, the more he began to sympathize with him and feel closer to him. In a show called Sagawa's Week, the TV crew relentlessly mocked Issei, making fun of his frail nature.
I mean, I guess it's not an unusual thing. A lot of like crazy killers and all that seem to be into others.
And calling him disgusting. The show displayed what a loser he was, and Sakakibara felt offended on Issei's behalf, pitying him. Sakakibara writes, "Even a murderer must have pride." Certainly, Sakakibara has a lot of pride in himself. Sakakibara goes on to describe how tough Issei had it in life after his crime. I suppose this is also to try to paint Issei as a victim, like he has tried to paint himself. The lack of self-awareness appears to be a common thing with such narcissists. Even when they commit such terrible things that harm others, they only think of themselves and how tough they have it. Sakakibara writes some quotes from Issei about how difficult his life became and how Issei felt like he had to lean on his crime to be able to survive. He became a pathetic punching bag for the media, and Sakakibara wonders if Issei did it on purpose to punish himself for his actions. Sakakibara bought all of Issei's books, 9 in total, claiming the
9
manga
books.
was very funny.
Like, you kill and eat a girl and you write 9 fucking books. I mean, what a world we live in. Seriously. Like, I don't even want to be offended because what's the fucking point, but seriously. What the fuck?
Sakakibara was very impressed with Issei's writing style, and it seems he emulated it for his own vanity book, Zekka, which is also full of pretentious metaphors to describe how things felt. Sakakibara, after reading Issei's book, describes Issei as a person with far more human sensibility than he has, which, given the fact that Issei is a murderous cannibal, tells you a lot about the kind of monster Sakakibara is. Sakakibara goes on to review some of Issei's books, picking out parts that he enjoyed or stood out to him. He admires him in his writing, saying that Issei is definitely not receiving the recognition he deserves, and claims that both Issei and himself are treated unjustly because of their past crimes. Issei also wrote a book about Sakakibara when the crime took place, and in it a letter is directed to Sakakibara himself. When Sakakibara first read it, he felt so angry that he threw the book against a wall, but now he looks back at it in a different light. On this site, he closes his review page with a reply letter directly to Issei. Re. Mr. Issei Sagawa, the bottled message you threw with all your might from your isolated island has drifted through the sea of time for 18 years and has finally washed ashore on the beach of my isolated island. Just as you initially hated me intensely, calling me a disgraceful monster, I too for many years despised and intensely hated you, calling you a clown. A few years ago, when I first picked up a Boy A and read the letter you wrote to me in the book, I was so angry that I threw it against a wall. I was a complete fool who understood nothing. I misunderstood you for a very long time. Only now have I finally come to understand the depth of the loneliness and suffering you carried. I think you were truly in great pain. I, the foolish one, have finally realized that it was I, not you, who was privileged and lived a half-hearted life. I, too, have recently begun to experience the agony and pleasure of expressing myself, of dissecting and exposing myself. If you say that art is nostalgia for what has been lost, then for me, art is a courtship for the lost present. You are the one who taught me this. With heartfelt respect and gratitude to you, who have clung to the tattered raft of your spirit, tossed about by the torrent of harsh fate, and have survived until today, thank you for being alive. From your Kohai. I think those who watch anime will understand what Kohai means, but in case you don't, it's a word that means junior, which is actually quite chilling here, because it implies that Sakakibara looks up to Ise and considers him as his senpai for committing murder before him. Like the gallery tab, just a lot of strange things about this page, but I suppose that is to be expected of a murderer. And that is it for the review tab. Going back to the top, we have
I don't even know what to say anymore, like, I'm tired.
the email tab, which naturally leads to an email address. It is no longer active, but it did belong to Sakakibara, and many people contacted him through it.
Sure.
Just in case, even though it was meant for the public so completely fine to show, I'll blur it out. The text above the email reads, for any comments, feedback, or questions regarding my book Zeka or this website, please contact me at the address below. I would say that that is it for this site, but when it started getting a lot of attention and some tremendous criticism, it changed slightly. The self-portrait images and slug photos were removed from the gallery, as was some information from his profile on the homepage. The email tab was removed and the address was just posted on the homepage instead, maybe so it would get more attention and feed his ego. The title card on the homepage changed to a new piece of art, which seems to be a boy in a raincoat holding an umbrella before a giant slug while standing in the rain. I suppose this boy is supposed to be Sakakibara. The review tab has also changed to something else and is now called Blog. It includes the reviews we read before, except now comments have been enabled and the section concerning Ise has been removed, likely due to controversy. 3 new entries have been added. There is a very short summary of the novel titled MT and the narrative about the marvels of the forest by Kenzaburo Oe, which details the narrator living in a village nestled in the forest valley as he searches for his own roots while reminiscing about the village folk tales his grandmother told him as a child. I think that Sakakibara is attached to this book because it features a grandson and a grandmother dynamic, and he has made it clear that he himself is very fond of his grandmother, even including a picture of her in his book. Another section concerns Sakakibara's visit to a Yasutake Funakoshi exhibition, where he marveled at the busts of women. And a final new section is where he replies to a comment from someone who appears to have been accused of a crime he didn't commit and thus had his life destroyed, so Sakakibara offers some advice and counseling. He recommends that the man seek legal help and attempts to give the person some comfort by writing poems.
Like, what fucking advice do you have? Like, you're an actual mother, so how can you give advice on anything?
The comments from others are pretty telling of how many sick and disturbed people there are out there. While some people can see through what Sakakibara is doing, others seem to celebrate and to a certain extent worship him. There are comments of people even saying they love him and wish him a happy new year and good fortune. Of course, this is nothing new. Serial killers seem to attract female admirers in particular, and it is said that Sakakibara actually married a female fan of his. But it's weird to see it firsthand like this, and makes me lose hope for humanity a little. And that's it for Sakakibara's website. One of, if not the, darkest Japanese website. The artwork would have already been weird if it was created by a normal person, but because it was created by a literal murderer, there is an extra disturbing layer on top. Sadly, Sakakibara earned an estimated 10 million yen, approximately $83,000 from the sales of his book, and likely even more through donations sent to his email on his website. So angered by the publishing of this book and website, the tabloid Shukan Post published his real name, Shinichiro Azuma, as well as his occupation and location. Images of him on a train and running outside were also taken and published, although his face is blurred to avoid legal trouble. From Sakakibara's writings, I think it is unlikely he took the website down himself, and I suspect authorities forced him to, which luckily must have caused him some frustration. I think the saddest thing about this is imagining what the victim's family must have gone through. First the book, then the website, both belittling the crimes and turning them into nothing more than tools for a selfish man's vanity. I've watched videos of the fathers of the victims and it's heart-wrenching, so to know that they were hurting terribly again because of this website is very disappointing, and I hope that someday the Japanese legal system comes to its senses and makes punishments stricter for young offenders who commit such barbaric
by this
crimes.
logic, you know, all of the movies, documentaries made about like killers probably always hurt the family when they hear about it and all that, right? You know, there isn't probably any way to really avoid it, but this is probably the worst case because the person themselves who's done the crime is not behind bars, they are free, and they are doing all this, glutting, making money off all this. It's just insane.
Times. Thank you for watching my...
That's it. Okay, well, I don't really have any kind of amazing insight to give on all this. It's just like fucked up to the max. Yeah, just absolutely fucked up. Seriously. Really messed up. I can't say anything else than generic, you know, like, it's fucked up and it's terrible that the guy is allowed outside like this. When it's clear that he's still insane, you know, and it's very likely that one day he'll do something again. And, you know, people will act surprised. Alright, next video is by Scary Interesting, the Horrifying Dungeon of Elmina Castle. Okay. If it loads.
Take a look at this castle. This is a castle known as Elmina Castle. It's quite beautiful from the outside and was clearly once an important place.
Middle East.
And in fact, it's the oldest European structure in sub-Saharan Africa. Unfortunately and horrifyingly, all that means is that the atrocities that took place in its dungeons went on for centuries.
Oh boy.
The rooms beneath this pristine white exterior were about as disturbing as you can find anywhere on Earth. There are a lot of disturbing things covered in the channel, and it's not really possible to compare them. But if I had to go with my gut and just pick one, I think I could easily make the case that this is the one on the sheer scale of the horrors alone. So with that said, although the events in this video are fleeting and non-descriptive, they're still highly disturbing, so viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Sure. I'm seeing that it says no AI imagery used, because recently I think he was using AI in his videos for like background image, right? But maybe he got enough backlash that he changed. Actually, I think we've all seen so many channels recently have that exact thing happen of using AI in some part of the process of the video, but then, you know, the backlash is too much and they stop.
From the outside, Elmina Castle betrays very little about what went on inside its walls. It rises bright and white beside the Atlantic Ocean as a massive stone structure overlooking the coast of Ghana. Around it, the modern town of Elmina just goes about life as usual. Fishing boats move across the water and waves crash against the shore. Markets and stands are set up all around, allowing the locals to sell their wares and goods. People just go about their everyday normal lives in the shadow of a building with a dark and unspeakable past that has stood on the same foundation for more than 5 centuries. To a visitor arriving there for the first time, the area around the castle can feel strangely beautiful. There's the ocean and the cool sea breeze that helps offset the blazing sunlight. The castle's white walls surrounding beautiful courtyards almost force you to squint with how bright they are in the daylight. And there's a sense that you're standing before one of the most important historic sites in West Africa. And Elmina Castle is now a museum and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, making it one of Ghana's major landmarks and a thriving tourist attraction. People come from all over the world to walk through it, but once visitors get inside its walls, however, their first impression of it begins to change. The castle's immense beauty is in no way separate from its horror. In some ways, it makes the atrocities that occurred there harder to understand. The same walls that gleam in the sun once enclosed rooms where human beings were held in total darkness. The same courtyards visitors cross today were once part of a system that tore families apart, punished resistance, and prepared captives for ships waiting offshore. the same building that held
So it's a slave trade castle.
European soldiers, merchants, governors, and clergymen also contained dungeons where enslaved Africans were packed together in stifling heat and overwhelming filth. This is the contradiction Elmina Castle forces new visitors to confront almost immediately. Above ground, the castle appears to be ornate and peaceful, but below ground, there's a different story to be told. Modern tours often begin in the open spaces of the castle, where visitors can still feel the sea air and see the bright blue Atlantic beyond the walls. Guides here will explain the broad history of the place, which we'll cover in a moment, but that history starts to hit harder the further you go. Eventually, the tour moves inward and downward away from the light. Visitors are led toward the dungeons, and the transition for many is felt emotionally and even physically. The air changes as the light falls away, and stone walls feel like they start to close in on you. In some passages, visitors have to lower their heads or crouch as they move through openings. What above ground seemed like a majestic castle by the sea suddenly and pervasively becomes heavier and more confined. And the further visitors go beneath the surface, the more oppressive the feeling, to the point where even modern flashlights can feel dim. Inside those dark and low underground chambers, guides describe what the spaces once held. They tell visitors that captives were crowded into rooms where there was stagnant air, little light, and no proper sanitation. They describe people sleeping on stone floors where others were forced to relieve themselves in the midst of hunger.
I was gonna say, yeah, like, they probably don't even care about bringing them to the bathroom or something. I can't even imagine. Absolute darkness, ton of people, piss and shit everywhere. I can't even imagine how insane that would make you. I mean, not even to compare because it's incomparable and incomprehensible, but recently in our bathroom, there's been this insanely terrible smell. It comes from the apartment below. And every morning I take a shower, right? And even though it's only 5 minutes, it's like a challenge, right? And, it makes you feel terrible to just be there like 5 minutes smelling this terrible smell. And I'm sure it's not even like, 10% or whatever of what this was like. I can't even imagine. And the absolute darkness too, right? I mean, it's pretty well known that for like mental health, darkness isn't good, but absolute darkness, right? Not a bit of light, very quickly makes you hallucinate and kind of go crazy.
Sickness, heat, and a long wait before being shipped off. They recite stories of men and women who were separated, families that were broken apart within the castle, and that some people remained in the dungeons for weeks or months before they were forced toward the sea. Then the guides will turn out the lights. The darkness that then engulfs the room is all-encompassing, and it initially shocks many who enter the dungeons. The only relief at that moment is knowing that someone will eventually turn the flashlights back on, but for the people once imprisoned there, no such certainty existed. For them, darkness was a condition they lived in within captivity 24 hours a day, and there was no fresh air waiting for them the rest of their time in the castle, at least not in any way worth looking forward to. The almost indescribable stench, which can still be sensed inside these chambers to this day, is enough to turn stomachs.
Yeah, I can't
This is
imagine.
why Elmina Castle is not just a place you go, it's a place you feel. In the brief moment of pitch black that the guides thrust visitors into, guests often have visceral reactions. Some will simply fall silent as they take in the environment, but most will break down into tears. Those who have taken the tour describe the experience as overwhelming in a way no book or documentary could fully prepare them for. When the flashlights finally flicker back on and the visitors are finally able to see again, they're often haunted by the looks on the faces of fellow tourgoers. And all of this happens before they ever reach a place in the castle known as the Door of No Return. Long before Elmina Castle stood on the Ghanaian coast, the shoreline around it was rich and alive with commerce. Before Europeans gave it the name Elmina, the settlement was known as Aso-Monson, a name that translates to inexhaustible water. And the societies of the Gold Coast weren't arranged around a single kingdom or empire. They were instead made up of many communities and states, which were often influenced by kinship, family authority, and local politics. But when Europeans arrived in the late 15th century, they saw opportunity. Portuguese explorers have been gradually moving down the western coast of Africa for decades, hoping to find new trade routes and access to wealth without relying on Arab and North African middlemen. They also hoped to spread Christianity and find allies who might help extend Portuguese power. But what they really wanted more than anything was gold and ivory. Aso-Monson just so happened to have gold in abundance. The gold trade was already thriving there before the Portuguese arrived, as African merchants, miners, and traders had long been moving gold through regional and long-distance networks. If the Portuguese could insert themselves into it, they might establish a permanent foothold on the coast, thereby controlling access to one of the richest sources of gold then known to Europe. The Portuguese soon began calling the town Elmina, or the mine, because of the wealth they associated with the area, so eventually Assumpção became known as Elmina. Even at the beginning of their presence in Ghana, the Portuguese had no intention of making their stay temporary. In 1481, King John II of Portugal ordered a fortress be built at Elmina. The following year, a fleet arrived from Portugal, carrying ships loaded with men, weapons, provisions, and pre-fitted building materials. The expedition also brought in artisans who could assemble the fort quickly, but it also included hundreds of armed men should the locals show any discontent with the Portuguese presence. For the small coastal settlement already there, the scale of the arrival served its purpose, as it was both staggering and intimidating. The Portuguese then negotiated with the local chief Kwame Ansa, presenting the fort as a source of protection and mutual benefit. Gifts were offered and promises were made, and the Portuguese described the power of King John II and the advantages of friendship with him. But the chief was wary, and for good reason. The building of a fortress wasn't something you could just erase if you turned out not to like it. Its presence would be permanent, as would its rules, embedding a foreign power directly into the town. Regardless of any reluctance on the part of Kwame, though, the Portuguese would not remain patient. Their plans were already in motion. As you might have guessed, the construction of the castle brought conflict almost immediately. The Portuguese wanted the fort in the most defensible position possible, but that meant disrupting the existing settlements. Homes would have to be removed, and the land would have to be taken in order for it to be built where they wanted it. A nearby rock that local people regarded as spiritually significant even became part of the construction plan as the Portuguese began using it for building materials. They tried to smooth the process with more gifts, but the damage began before those gestures could even be presented.
Yeah, that's already too much, obviously.
To the citizens being displaced, everything was being taken from them with no immediate compensation, so resistance followed and violence broke out. Several Portuguese men were killed in skirmishes, but the Europeans ended up getting the upper hand when they started burning local homes as the work in the fort continued. Soon enough, stone by stone, the building rose, marking the beginning of a new order on that stretch of the coast. Inside its walls, European authority would be protected by cannons and soldiers, while outside, the African communities would have to adapt to a new power. Once completed, Elmina Castle, which is also known as Fort St. George, became one of the most important European structures in West Africa. Over time, Elmina grew around the fort, and its presence changed not only the town, but also the relationships among communities around it. For a time, gold remained at the center of Elmina's importance, since the Portuguese wanted access to the metal that had drawn them there in the first place. But the Atlantic world was changing. The building raised to guard the gold trade would become a prison for human beings. Once that changed to cold, the castle's most important spaces were no longer the rooms where merchants counted goods or governors looked out over the sea. They were instead the rooms below, where men and women were crowded into darkness by the hundreds and held there until ships were ready for them. As the hunger for labor across the Atlantic grew and European colonies expanded in the Americas, plantations needed more workers than European powers were willing or able to supply from their own populations. Sugar, tobacco, cotton, and other plantation commodities depended increasingly on forced labor, which would eventually reshape the purpose of coastal forts like Elmina Castle. Soon it became part of a much larger system of captivity, and those who arrived in Elmina didn't usually begin their suffering there. Many had already been torn from their homes far from the coast, having been captured during wars or raids, or sold through networks that connected inland regions to coastal traders. By the time they reached Elmina Castle, they had often already endured exhaustion, hunger, and forced marches that wore them down and made them more manageable. Once there, people were brought into the castle, separated from family members, crowded into underground rooms, and held there until traders were ready to move them out. The Portuguese had never built Elmina Castle as a dungeon, but over time, the trade became more central to activity along the coast than gold itself. By the 17th century, the industry had become a dominant force in West African commerce, thereby forever changing Elmina's role. Then in 1637, after decades of attempts, the Dutch finally seized the castle from the Portuguese. Unfortunately, under Dutch authority, Elmina became the capital of the Dutch Gold Coast, and it remained deeply tied to the Atlantic slave trade. And it worked like this. European goods came to the West African coast, Africans were forced onto ships bound for the Americas, and plantation products and raw materials returned to Europe. This system connected Europe, Africa, and the Americas, but inside Elmina Castle, it could only be described as complete and total suffering. And all of this was made worse by the stark contrast with the world above. The castle's above-ground rooms continued to serve the needs of the men who oversaw and guarded it. Europeans literally lived there with their families and worshipped together. Then, just one level below that were the dungeons that served an entirely different purpose. And the numbers attached to Elmina Castle are difficult to grasp. The castle could hold large numbers of captives at a time, and over the centuries, many thousands passed through its rooms and corridors. By the 18th century, sources describe tens of thousands of people passing through its seaward exit in a single year. And again, there were two entirely separate worlds at work inside the castle that existed inches apart from one.
You know, just before this, we were watching a video about like a 14-year-old who killed some kid and cut off his head, and we were talking about, you know, like, I was talking about like people not having developed empathy, you know, and it's something that needs to be developed, right? Like, you want to think that everybody being born will have it, it's a human thing, but clearly I think, you know, it's there, but you need to develop it, right? You can't just expect it to be there if you're not working on developing it in children. But then I was thinking about like this case right here, right? Like, there was probably hundreds, if not thousands of soldiers and guards, you know, doing this to those people. And my first thought is like, all of them are psychopaths with no empathy, but it seems like a cop-out, right? Saying that, like, you know, it's just that things are much more complicated in human beings, right? Like, they might have empathy, but for other things, other people, right? If you, like, when you're born, if your boss, people like make you develop empathy for, I don't know, your siblings, your family, but then they also at the same time are like insanely racist, you know, constantly making you think that, you know, black people are like not even people, and, you know, them being treated as slaves is, you know, totally normal, then your empathy gets, what's the word for it? Cut off or cut in half or something, right? And, you know, it's not that you're like a psychopath in the normal way, right? It's more like, what am I trying to describe? You know, like, do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, it's literally that you have been conditioned to think of those people as not human, and so there's no need for empathy for these kind of people. And it's kind of crazy that, again, empathy, that to me is like a general concept, right? Like, it's a general feeling that should apply to many things, but that you can actually be conditioned to cut it off entirely for literally human beings. I don't know. I'm just trying to say like how crazy human brain can work, you know what I mean? Because again, it feels too easy to just say they're all psychopaths and they have no empathy. Like, some of those people, I'm sure, like, cared about their kids and their family, and yet at the same time they were totally cut off from empathy for those other human beings because of skin colors, because they were raised thinking that those people are not human. I just, you know, again, can't imagine it as a somewhat normal person with somewhat normal empathy, I guess. I don't know. Human psychology is really just insane.
Above ground, soldiers lived and worked, merchants conducted business, and governors administered trade. Missionaries and chaplains brought Christianity into the same structure where human beings were being bought and confined before being unceremoniously shipped away. There were suites where the Europeans slept and lavish halls where they ate together, and just below all these things was a world of complete opposites. The captives held at the castle were confined beneath and within the exact same complex where opulence and wealth were being celebrated above ground. In fact, the exact same chapel where prayer and worship were held sat directly above a place of starvation and suffering, holding men who claimed to be Christians above and captives treated as cargo below. All the while, the men who operated Elmina Castle did not see themselves as villains. Prayers could be said inside walls where people were locked in total darkness, and religious language could be carved into the stone of the same complex where families were being separated. It's difficult to imagine a clear image of moral blindness than when men went upstairs to worship while other human beings suffered below them. And Elmina Castle's upper world was not only hypocritical in a religious sense, it also served a practical purpose. From above, the Dutch could watch over the captives and send orders down below. They could decide when captives would eat or when they would be moved, punished, or forced toward awaiting ships. For female captives in particular, that vertical arrangement became even more dangerous. Accounts of Elmina Castle repeatedly described the governor's access to captive women. A staircase led directly from the governor's quarters to the women's dungeon, and their confinement...
Right, it's really like this too, right? I mean, you know, it's like you don't see them as human, but you still want to fuck her. What the... Again, like, I can't understand the mental wiring of someone like that, you know what I mean? Like, how does anything in your head even work?
It was about much more than waiting for ships. Every night, the governor would take to his balcony and look down into the dungeon to make selections for who would spend the night with him. Those chosen would then be washed and shaved in preparation for the night with the governor. Any woman who dared resist or defy being chosen was punished severely, often chained up without clothing outside the castle for at least 24 hours. There they'd endure blazing sun, insect stings, and public humiliation. In other cases, defiant women were made to wear a cannonball chain to their leg. Men, meanwhile, were punished with more finality. Those who resisted, fought back, or attempted escape had examples made out of them.
Yeah.
A small room at Elmina Castle is marked with a skull and crossbones and is remembered as the dead cell, where rebellious male captives could be shut away without food or water and denied both until they inevitably died. Male or female, however, the dungeons were designed to reduce people into something less than human. The conditions inside each dungeon were intentionally brutal. As mentioned, they were cramped and poorly ventilated, and some spaces only had small openings for air and light. Captives were packed together in numbers far beyond what any human being could endure in such a confined space with any sense of dignity. In some accounts, individual cells held as many as 200 people at once. There was also nothing resembling proper sanitation, and this led to possibly the most disturbing part of it all. Captives had to relieve themselves where they were being held, meaning they lived and slept on floors where other people urinated, defecated, vomited, bled, gave birth, menstruated, and died. Over time, the dungeon floors themselves were said to have literally absorbed the very history of that confinement.
I can't imagine, like, again, and I often talk about this when we watch videos like this about the slave trade. You know, as fucked up as it is to say, I don't understand why they didn't treat the slave better, right? In the sense of, like, they want the slave as workers, and yet treating them like this, you know, they probably lost, I feel like they lost the majority of them through, like, disease, malnutrition, deaths, and all that, right? Like, genuinely, it's baffling, you know? It's baffling. Yeah. I never understand. Yeah.
Modern visitors are told that these layers literally raise the floor above its original level. It's difficult to mention these details without making them feel like a grotesque description for its own sake, but at Elmina Castle, the filth was central to the experience. And the food situation was almost no better. Beyond the poor quality, it would be passed or thrown into the dungeons. Some captives had to separate their dinners from piles on the ground before they could consume them, and all of this served an important purpose to the Dutch. A starving person was easier to control, and it made escape less likely too. Those who held captives at Elmina understood that people who were stronger might fight, so captives were given just enough, but not enough to remain physically capable. Some accounts even tell of captives who simply stopped eating because of the reality of the situation they faced. As you can probably...
I mean, again, I can only assume most of them went insane, you know? I feel like even spending a week in that situation, you would just never be the same again as a human being. Like, your brain would actually be broken. I can't even imagine.
We infer from this set of conditions, disease was a constant problem as well. Malaria, yellow fever, and other infections traveled easily. From this, death became an everyday part of the castle's routine, and when captives died, they were simply removed from the dungeons and tossed into the sea. There was no burial with mourning family members present or return home to a permanent resting place. And yet, despite the horrific conditions they were forced to live in, not everyone died there. Some survived the castle's dungeon and were left for an indeterminate amount of time before being loaded onto a crowded ship for a long journey across the Atlantic.
Which I'm sure that killed even more of them, again.
And for those individuals, Elmina Castle still had one final passage that today is known as the Door of No Return. And the name truly captures what the exit came to represent. Once captives were forced through it, they were not expected to ever return to their homeland. It was the end of the castle's internal workings and the beginning of another horror entirely. To reach it, captives moved from the dungeons into narrow, dim corridors that led toward the seaward side of the fortress. Even today, those who visit the castle and walk the route often experience the journey as both physically tight and emotionally heavy. For those who lived it, however, those final movements inside Elmina Castle must have been filled with absolute dread. Beyond the door of no return was the ocean and the ships that would take them far away from home. In some accounts, men and women who had been separated inside the castle were brought together again near the exit. But this was yet another act of cruelty, not one of mercy. A husband might see his wife after months of not knowing whether she was alive or not. A mother might see a son, or siblings might be briefly united, only to be torn apart once again as they were loaded onto ships. In a way, the door of no return became symbolic as a transition point between the lives they once knew and whatever awaited them on the other side of the ocean. Today, Elmina Castle still stands above the coast. It outlived the Portuguese who built it.
It is definitely probably in the list of these locations that are just insane to visit, right? Like Auschwitz and some of the concentration camp and death chambers and all that. Like a place where so many people were treated like literally not human anymore and killed. It's just hard to even comprehend. I've never actually visited a place like this. It's something.
Dutch who seized it and the British who later took control of it. The trade at Elmina Castle did eventually end, but only after centuries of human beings had already been forced through the dungeons. Under Dutch control, the atrocities committed there continued until 1814, when the Dutch abolished their participation in the slave trade. By then, though, Elmina had already become one of the most infamous holding sites on the West African coast. The exact number of captives who passed through the castle's dungeons and the door of no return can never be known with any certainty, but estimates suggest that it was as many as 30,000 per year. And horrifyingly, they were just part of a much larger catastrophe in which millions of Africans were shipped from coastal forts and trading posts. Elmina Castle may have been one of the most notorious among them, but it was just one of 40 such trading posts along the Ghanaian coast that held people against their will before the fateful voyage to the other side of the Atlantic. Those who visit the castle in modern times describe a profound experience they will never forget. Since the floors of the dungeon are still original and the exact same on which captives slept, lived, gave birth, and eliminated waste on, the lingering smell of those rooms has yet to dissipate. It's supposedly almost enough to knock you off your feet, and it's not uncommon for those on guided tours to vomit while inside the dungeon spaces. More than anything though, tour guides describe visitors breaking down into uncontrollable sobs as they bear witness to a place where so much human suffering occurred. Even today,
I can't imagine again, like I said before, maybe visiting Auschwitz or something feels like an important thing to do as a human being, to understand humanity or something, I don't know. But I don't think I would want to visit many places like that. One in my life would probably be enough,
Elmina Castle remains a study in contrasts. Above ground, it's still as beautiful as it ever was, inside and out. The surrounding village still fishes the waters, and merchants still sell their handmade goods while the castle looms high above them. Below ground, the stones that make up the dungeon hold memories, experiences, and even the sense of the unspeakable horrors that occurred there over the course of hundreds of years. And of all the European buildings constructed south of the Sahara, Elmina Castle is still the oldest in existence.
Humanity is the kind of video, the kind of story that just makes you have a hard time reconciliating the fact that you are a human being like those people who did all this, you know what I mean? Some might just kind of say, those people were not human beings, they were monsters, all that, but again, unfortunately they were human beings, and human beings are capable of things like this, and did things like this. And I'm also a human being. It's like you don't want to be associated with these people, right? But it's crazy. I really don't know what to say. Like, I don't have anything insightful. It's just like, yeah, it's crazy. Crazy. Yeah, really sad and just disgusting. All I can say. I'm gonna take a quick break before we continue. Give me 5 minutes. I will be back. Okay, sorry for the wait. I am back. And this is all quite the bummer stream. Huh? On one hand, it's like, you know, I want to do this kind of like horror stream, but maybe true crime stuff is a bit much. At the same time, I don't know what kind of like horror video to find. Maybe I should just do like horror movie reaction or something. Because yeah, the true crime obviously is like really depressing, that's for sure. I mean, I kind of know not going into it, but then every time it's like worse than I expected. Freaking hell. Maybe this one will be less messed up. By the channel Point Raven, Taiwan's Little Girl in Red, an internet rabbit hole.
On October 21st, 1990, a bank manager from Taichung, Taiwan went hiking on Mount Bilu with a few of his friends. It was a pretty challenging trail, and one part of it needed them to climb up using a rope. And it was here the friends took photos of themselves by the rope as a way of remembering that they took the trip. They made it to the summit, and then they made their way back down. On the way back down, the bank manager, named Lee, fell behind his friends. When they made it to the beginning of the trail, they waited for him, but he never came down. They couldn't find him, and the search parties didn't find anything either. But in February 1991, a group of students found his remains along a nearby creek. The official story was that he got lost and starved to death. No signs of foul play. Then, his friends got the photos developed. This was the last photo of him. He's holding onto the rope and looking back at the camera. At the top was a small figure in red.
Okay.
And maybe it's pareidolia, but I also see a figure in a black robe and a skull for a head in the bushes right next to it.
Yeah, no, I don't see anything. I just don't see it.
If you know a thing or two about Taiwanese internet culture, you know where I'm going with this. The Little Girl in Red is a Taiwanese urban legend from the 90s that allegedly started off as a local folktale before making its way to the internet. Now let's go to March 1998. A family went on a hike in Dakung, Taichung.
Where am I looking now? Oh. The music. Yeah, I mean, it's a little girl in red. Okay.
According to a user on lowyacht.net, after a funeral, a family was watching a trip video in which a little girl in red was found tagging along with a relative who passed away. But no one remembered seeing her during the trip. The footage was authenticated by professionals and caused a disturbance island-wide after it was shown in the media. Strangely, the family member who gave the TV station the video died in a car crash shortly after. And that's the gist of the legend. The Little Girl in Red became so culturally relevant that they made a video about her in 2015, the tag-along. There were a lot of stories by people who thought they had a run-in with the girl in red. Some even made it to local news, like in July 2014, when an older woman went missing for 5 days in Hualien. When search parties found her, she said that a little girl in red had guided her.
Okay.
All of these, plus 2 famous pieces of quote-unquote evidence, made the...
It's always something in color, right? In France, one of the famous ones is the woman in white, who is hitchhiking at night in a white dress, usually in darkness. If you stop and take her, she will sit behind you, not next to you, and you can... I'm not sure if you can talk to her or she stays quiet, but eventually you basically crash and die or something. Yeah, something like that.
The legend looked real. So, was it real? Well, the 2014 story actually had nothing to do with the girl in red. An older woman did go missing for 5 days, but police looked at security footage and saw that she had actually wandered off on her own. And after that, she changed her story. There was no little girl in red after all. She actually ran into a man who just ignored her.
Okay.
In an interview 3 years later, she actually denied ever seeing the girl in red, and instead said that a group of 5 or 6 people saw her the first day she disappeared but ran off because something seemed to scare them. Of course, only the initial story went viral, the version where she said a little girl in red took her away because it was scary and entertaining. The debunking side, not so much. So now, that left us with the photo from 1990 and the video from 1998. According to most versions of the story, one of the men on the hike died not long after the trip. The family noticed the girl while rewatching the footage after his funeral, and they sent it to a TV network who aired it as part of a paranormal TV show. The 90s quality footage and the washed out lighting don't really help to debunk it either. A lot of people said that her skin looked grayish green, almost like a corpse, and her eyes were solid black. And I totally see it. It honestly reminds me of the black-eyed children that we hear about in the US. In the years after, the same show would air follow-up segments interviewing other alleged witnesses of the girl in red, which grew the legend even more. Also, according to this 2018 post on PTT, which is like Taiwanese Reddit, around 1998 was when a bunch of shows about ghost hunting and sharing ghost footage popped up. It was a sort of paranormal TV show craze, as they put it. And they mentioned that the footage might have been staged to get views for the show.
I mean, thanks Captain Obvious. Most shows like that do this, yeah, obviously. That's just how it is, right? All of the paranormal activity, ghost hunter, you know, even those who start genuine, eventually it's like there's no point in continuing if they don't find something, as they will lose viewership. There's a very famous case. There was this YouTube channel I used to watch. I think Gus DX was his name. In the late 2010, he was a gaming YouTuber, Minecraft, all that, you know, entertaining. And then between like 2015 and 20 or something, he started like changing his content, and he started doing like ghost investigation in France, going to like famous haunted location and staying the night. He had like crazy production value, right? Many camera, crazy editing. He would do like 2-hour documentary. But you know, for the first like 2 years or something, and however many episodes he did, he clearly was legit because he found nothing, right? Most of his videos were like, there's this little bit of light that was flying by or something, but you know, clearly he didn't fake anything. And at first he was entertaining, even though he didn't find anything, right? I think he had good viewership, couple million views per video and all that. But then eventually, you know, I guess the viewership was going down, and he did his first fake video, and that kind of destroyed everything right away. I think he was in some kind of like old medieval tower, and I forget what it was, like he made a fake thing where, you know, something in the shot of the camera just was pushed down some stairs, and very quickly there was like an army of other YouTubers who do debunking content, like doing analysis of the footage, debunking it, showing how it was altered and all that. And at first he was trying to deny it, and quickly became a big drama, and eventually he admitted that yeah, he faked it and all that, right? That this whole thing just reminded me of that drama, yeah. Although he's doing these days, you know, it's like I kind of feel for him. Again, like at first people were watching, but eventually if nothing happened, people stopped watching. But then if you start faking it, I mean, what's the point? Even though I'm saying that, well, you know, there's some ultra famous channel on YouTube who do ghost hunting and constant faking stuff, and yet they were making like banks of that. So yeah, I think it's just, it doesn't work if you started honest, you know. Yeah.
I mean, it's like the easiest thing ever to stage. A girl wears red, and everyone else pretends they don't see her. The two details I couldn't find evidence for were professionals authenticating the footage, and the family member who gave the footage to the TV station also dying. So I'm gonna say those were made up because people were trying to make a story of it. In 2007, Dr. Billy Pon published a write-up that analyzed the footage and argued that it was fake. About nobody from the family remembering the girl or recognizing her, he wrote, "There are many forks in the mountain paths in Taiwan, and it's inevitable that a stranger will follow behind the group in a blocked section. It's not surprising that no one noticed. Therefore, even if those people's testimonies are true, they cannot prove that this is a paranormal phenomenon. Even if the death of a relative is true, it might just be a coincidence." Basically, the girl was a member of another group who just happened to fall in line with the family. As for the green skin, pitch black eyes, and other ghostly features, it was the camera quality and lighting.
Sure.
Specifically, he pointed out that there was an area of the trail in the video that seemed to have more shade than the rest of it, and everyone passing through it got the black-eyed look. He argued that if the footage had gone on longer, we would have seen the girl leave the shaded part and her eyes would be normal again. But he mentioned something really interesting that I couldn't find anywhere else online.
Good.
Another explanation circulating online debunks this ghost story with eyewitness testimony. A special report on FTV's Evening News stated that the woman in red actually appeared at the city government's New Year's Eve party. It turned out that a woman surnamed Chu, who was selling rice noodle soup outside the venue, was the ghostly woman in red that a certain paranormal program had been hyping up for a long time. This woman, who admitted in an interview that the woman in red hyped up by the paranormal program is herself. Many people at the scene saw that the woman in red was indeed a living person, and many even deliberately went to shake her hand. Now, what about the photo from 1990? I think the earliest mention of that story, where a bank manager went missing, was a PTT post from April 2005. It's quite the wall of text, so I'm going to give you the short version. A hiker who went by Old Sheep met a real, living girl on Mount Bilu about a year before Lee, the bank manager, disappeared. She claimed that she was looking for a waterfall that she had seen in her dreams. Old Sheep knew the waterfall she was talking about and led her there,
Nice.
but not before sharing a tent with her for the night because it was getting dark. When Lee went missing and that photo of him by the rope began going around, Old Sheep saw it and supposedly recognized the girl in the photo because she was wearing the same outfit. No way to prove any of this because it's literally a Reddit post, but on Taiwan's Reddit, but it's the earliest version I could find, and it wasn't trying to be a spectacle like a lot of the stories about her are. Most versions after that changed up details in one way or another, especially when it came to the bank manager's name, and especially after the story made it to Western social media. I saw it spelled many times as Lee Han Shou. Well, Han Shou, the way it's written there, is not a real name. I'm guessing it was a blend of Han and Xiu.
Okay.
This article by Set News just said his surname was Lee, spelled L-I, not L-E-E.
Is that wrong?
And this article by China Times said his name was Li Xiu.
No one has the same info.
I don't know where the Han came from, but almost every creator who covered this, even Mr. Ballin, said his name was Li Han Shou.
What take, but I'm not a fan of Mr. Bolin. I know he's widely popular, but I really don't enjoy his style of, drawing out stuff. I mean, it's been 2 or 3 years since the last time I tried a video, but yeah. I guess I tend to just not be a fan usually of the big channels in this kind of true crime videos, yeah. The big channels obviously are the most popular because they're more approachable, maybe. They do, I'm not saying it's bad, but they do friendlier recap, or they just have a style that usually doesn't do it for me. Yeah, kind of a random tangent.
I think this was just a mistake with translation when the English internet picked up on it in 2025. As for the figure in the photo, it really depended on where you're seeing the story. If Old Sheep's version was true, then it was just a young woman on a hike. Some articles labeled her as a little girl, while others called her a grown woman. Personally, I still see the figure in a black robe and a skull for a head next to her. But, like I said, pareidolia, and I'm pretty sure those are just some bushes. So really, the only thing we know for a fact was that a hiker named Lee died on Mount Bilu, and the last photo of him happened to catch someone else. As for the 1998 footage, there's a reason 90s media kinda spawned their own genre of horror, analog. I'm sure back in the day it was cutting edge, but today the low-res videos just look uncanny, and give people black eyes and make their skin look terrible when the lighting is bad. It was also the culture at the time, like the PTT user said about the paranormal TV shows. Everyone was looking for spooky footage to point at and say it was a ghost. So
Sure.
what I think happened was that the story came after the 1990 photo and the 1998 video were all
But it's part of the fun, right? I mean, most people know it's fake and it's probably easy to debunk, but it's part of the fun. You know, you see this kind of creepy looking kid or woman and, you know, it's part of the fun.
already on the internet, because apparently it wasn't scary enough. Pretty much all news coverage came at least a decade after that, and by then, everyone had convinced themselves that the little girl in red was real.
I guess so.
And if you go
Probably from the way she walks, she looks more like a woman. Like, there's something about the way she walks, yeah.
to 2023, there is yet another video
Like an older
where
woman.
the story changed after reaching Western social media. This one came from China, and it showed alleged remains floating in a pool underground in what people thought was a secret bunker.
Oh, I remember we saw this in some of the video, yeah.
Check out my video on Beanbag Adventure.
Was that debunked? I forgot what it was, yeah. I forget. Okay, well, that was interesting. At least this one wasn't sad, right? It's a bit more of a goofy mystery. Yeah. Good stuff. Maybe I should try to find more videos like this to watch, rather than true crime, because true crime is a bit much, you know? Yeah. Okay, good one. Good one. Next might be more of the same, maybe. This is Horrors of the Arabic Internet by Farrell McGuire.
In the mid-2010s, the internet was busy developing its own unique genres of horror content. Before this era, the majority of spooky stuff you would find online would more or less be the same sort of content you could find offline, like scary commercials or clips from horror movies. But over the 2010s, creepypastas, internet mysteries, and ARGs would become essential parts of internet culture, creating a whole new subsection of horror media that only exists on the internet. Here in the West, we typically focus on the same few flavors of internet horror. Reddit mysteries, online rabbit holes, analog horror, you probably all know pretty well by now. But during this formative period in the mid-2010s, other parts of the world were also busy developing their own unique takes on internet horror.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the Russian Death Files, which is a genre we've talked about often on this channel. Our first topic for today is one such unique non-Western niche of internet horror.
Okay. Tell me about it.
On February 18th, 2017, new YouTuber Abdullah Al-Ambari would make his first upload. The video is a fairly standard urban exploration of the Khaybar fort in Saudi Arabia. Abdullah takes us around, tells us a bit of backstory to the fort, and that's it. Nothing out of the ordinary happens. At least not until his second video, which was put up only 5 days later. This clip is another urban exploration, this time of an abandoned hospital in the city of Mecca. The first thing you'll notice is some issues Abdullah is seemingly having with this camera, which appears to be glitching every so often.
Skipping. Yeah, that's quite a
The
glitch.
second thing you'll notice is the overall different feeling of this video. While his first upload was bright, open, and displaying an interesting piece of history, this one is dark, claustrophobic, and showing us a decrepit building. We can only really see whatever Abdullah is pointing his flashlight at, and there's an eeriness that seems to pervade this entire video. Occasionally, we come across a dirty mattress on the ground, and as our cameraman gets deeper and deeper into the hospital, we can hear the increasingly loud sounds of a call to prayer that's been unrecognizably warped by the echoing empty stone hallways.
It actually feels less creepy, because if it's fully silent, that's when it's creepy. But because you hear, like, there's probably a bunch of people in the building right next, it feels a bit less creepy.
Eventually, Abdullah makes it onto the roof of the building, which is when the tension plaguing the rest of the video seems to dissipate. We're no longer peeking around dark corners, the call to prayer sounds much more normal up here.
Wait, the building doesn't look finished. Was it actually an hospital in use?
And this is also where the video ends. While this clip is undeniably tense and creepy, it's a little hard to call it horror.
I mean,
But Abdullah wasn't done
it's just an abandoned building, right?
there. His next video will make it clear just which direction he was planning to take his channel in. The title of his next upload tells us that during this next Urbex adventure, he encountered a jinn. Alright, we gotta take a second here to go over what jinns are. In
Sure.
Western culture, we typically
Actually, no, because recently I watched some very interesting video talking about it. How, yeah, in Western culture, the jinn has been pretty changed from like what they really are in Arabic culture. It's pretty interesting, and it's actually kind of a shame because the classic real jinn are a lot more scary.
separate spirits into two categories: ghosts and demons. Demons are always bad, and ghosts are usually bad, but sometimes they can be good. Demons are inhuman supernatural creatures, whereas ghosts are implied to be the spirit of a person who's died. While there are demons in Arabic culture, most supernatural beings fall into the category of jinns, or as you may know them, genies. A jinn is not really a ghost, but is also more similar to a human than a ghost is. A ghost is kind of implied to be between the realms of the living and the realms of the dead, but jinns very much live on this mortal plane of existence. Just like humans, they have free will and can even live as practicing Muslims, which will help them when they die because in Islam, jinns are subject to the same divine judgment from God that humans are. Jinns are usually invisible, but can shapeshift and appear as whatever creature or being they choose to. They typically live in dark, desolate, and abandoned places deep in the desert. Their intentions towards people are more or less neutral. You can think of jinns as like a race of humanoid cryptids that live alongside humans, sometimes helping us, sometimes hurting us. Abdullah's third video starts with him walking in the desert alone at night, only carrying a flashlight and his camera. He's walking up to another abandoned fortress. This one apparently has a reputation for being inhabited by jinn. Only 2 minutes into the video, just as he's approaching the entrance to the fortress, this happens.
الحسن من المنطقة الوسطى. أحاول أسجل قدر الإمكان بأسرع وقت المقاطع لكن ما ألحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شايفين؟
As indicated by the always useful red circle, Abdullah appears to have already come across a jinn before even setting foot into the supposedly haunted fortress. He calls out to the creature, but receives no response. So,
I mean, creature, like, come on. We barely saw anything.
apparently not feeling any sort of fear or hesitation at this seemingly frightening situation, he begins to walk towards the entity.
Peak horror movie character, right?
But when he gets to the entrance, it's no longer there. The rest of the video is much like the last, a tense urban exploration video of a dark and decrepit place. Putting this supposed jinn sighting at the beginning of this clip was probably just a tactic to drive viewership, but what Abdullah also succeeded in doing was planting the seeds for a homegrown and entirely Arabic form of internet horror: Arab ghost hunting.
What's the difference with Western ghost hunting? Because this seems kind of the same. Huh? You go to some abandoned creepy location and, you know, either you go around and there's nothing but it's creepy, or you just fake that there's something. What's the difference?
Ghost hunting in the West typically follows a very particular format that you're almost certainly familiar with. A team of quote-unquote paranormal experts enter a supposedly haunted place, set up a bunch of fancy equipment, and try to capture evidence of the supernatural. Not much usually happens in these investigations, and when things do happen, there are usually vague sounds or faint orbs captured on camera. These shows and videos always present themselves as scientific investigations of something that's inherently unscientific, and they often end up being a little boring and dry because of it. Arab ghost hunting, on the other hand, is a whole different beast. There's no fancy equipment, just brave adventurers with their flashlights and cell phone cameras. This is the WWE version of ghost hunting and is infinitely more entertaining. While Abdullah's first couple of videos were fairly tame, he would up the ante significantly as he became more and more popular.
Again, like, it's goofy, but it's entertaining. I don't mind it, you know? Yeah.
شوفوا أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم شوف
He's still going to it. This man
بالله
is the ultimate ghost hunter.
ايش
It's so simple, but it's entertaining.
هذه الممرات كلها كاملة بسم الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله بسم الله
I like he sounds like he's about to fight the ghost.
I think what makes these videos so unsettling isn't just the paranormal activity, a lot of the creepiness is driven by the setting. Remember when I said how jinns are thought to inhabit dark and abandoned places deep in the desert? All these Arab ghost hunting channels follow this idea, and these videos are mostly filmed in these really creepy decrepit buildings. Even if there were no dark figures crossing into view or doors slamming or sounds of distant screaming echoing through the empty hallways, these videos would still be pretty creepy. There are two main channels that pioneered Arab ghost hunting. One of them is obviously Abdullah al-Ambari. The other one though is Hassan Barbar. Hassan Barbar started his channel about a year and a half after Abdullah al-Ambari. The content is very similar. Vertical cell phone videos showing abandoned Middle Eastern buildings illuminated by a flashlight with the occasional encounter with jinns. Where Hassan differs though is the directness of his paranormal encounters. In Abdullah al-Ambari's videos, the horror tends to be pretty similar to something like a found footage movie. You never really see the jinns up close, you only ever catch vague glimpses of them moving in the distance. What you do see are the things the jinns are doing, like door slamming, loud strange sounds, or...
I mean, that's what works for this kind of stuff. I mean, all of the fake ghost hunter on YouTube, they don't really show you an actual monster or a ghost. No?
objects breaking. I think keeping the thing terrorizing you as an unknown is a good way to make horror more effective, but Hassan Barbar has a very different way of doing things.
Okay.
In his videos, he almost always gets up close and personal with jinns. Usually this manifests as Hassan walking up to a hooded figure that has their back towards the camera, and then they have a conversation. The voices of these jinns generally tends to be pretty strange, and they all seem to speak with this weird
The jinn is sneakers or something.
cadence.
أنا جاي بدي تعملي لي سحر بدفع أقتل واحدة منكم طب أشوف وجهك أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم
Is that a mask?
بسم الله أنت مين؟ أنت إيش؟ أنت مين؟ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Okay.
In the following video, Hassan is walking through the hills of Jordan alone at night. As always, only armed with a flashlight and a cell phone. He eventually spots a lone figure standing still in a ravine in the distance. He walks towards it and gets close enough to talk to it, but the jinn doesn't say anything. It just stands there staring at Hassan. The jinn's face seems to be obscured by long, light hair, but from what we can see of his face, it appears to have darkish gray skin. At some points in the video, the jinn will open and close his mouth erratically as if it's talking in some frantic manner, but no sound appears to come out.
غريب أنت بشر أنت إخوان إيش هذا
Hassan continues to try to talk to the jinn,
It
but
is
to no
kinda
avail.
creepy.
He eventually decides to leave, turning his back every few seconds to make sure the jinn is still in the same spot.
Just walk backward.
والله وين هذا وين راح إخوان والله كان هون أعوذ بالله من الشيطان
I don't know, man. The sheer absurdity of this is enough to make it creepy. Not
Really?
much else really happens in the video. After that weird jump scare, Hassan mostly just backs away from the jinn until the video ends.
Maybe I'm not in the mood, I don't know. It feels more like comedic to me. Which is fine, I like comedic horror.
In another face-to-face encounter with a jinn, Hassan is giving his intro to the camera when he gets interrupted by a voice calling out to him in the distance.
صندوق الوصف والكل يدعم يا اخوان.
طيب الجديد يمكنك الدخول.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وينك؟
Hassan cuts his intro short and begins searching for whoever was trying to talk to him. He begins shining his flashlight through the halls of an obviously long abandoned building, and he eventually sees a dark figure standing at the end of one of them.
It's always like right in the corner, right? Yeah, which project style?
عرفتني؟
نعم.
مين أنا؟
إنك من تريد أن تفشي السر.
It's the cartoon voice.
The Jinn and Hassan begin following each other around this abandoned building, carrying on a conversation that appears to be mostly made up of the Jinn asking Hassan nonsense riddles. The Jinn in this case just appears to be a guy wearing tape on his face. It's so simple and stupid on the surface, but just like the last video, the sheer absurdity of this situation combined with the setting is enough to make this pretty creepy in a surreal way. Hassan Barber has a ton of videos, each with their own wacky twist on what a Jinn is.
Okay.
While the Jinns in Abdullah al-Ambari's videos tend to follow a more Western form of ghosts and hauntings, Hassan appears to stick closer to the more traditional idea of Jinns. Not really ill-intentioned ghosts, but rather another race of human-like creatures with supernatural powers that live alongside us. With a traditional Jinn being neutral towards us, an encounter with one of them is more likely to be just weird than bad or good. Maybe this doesn't always make for scarier videos, but I think it does make them quite a bit more interesting and unique. Arab ghost hunting creators have garnered huge followings over the years. Hassan Barber, for example, has almost 900,000 subscribers on YouTube and close to 2 million followers on TikTok. With so much attention on these videos, it's no surprise that Arab ghost hunting has blossomed into its own niche, with countless smaller creators replicating the format, which has also brought about new trends in the genre. Like, for example, there's a sort of reckless fearlessness in a lot of Arab ghost hunting videos.
Yeah.
Some of these investigators hear jinns stirring somewhere in the depths of one of these abandoned buildings. It doesn't strike any kind of fear. Instead, they break out in a mad dash towards the source of the sound.
Right. It's like they want to fight this thing. It's kind of funny. Like, you know, you're not stuck with the ghost. The ghost is stuck here with you.
Like anything in life, Arab ghost hunting was not born in a vacuum. In fact, the format is almost a carbon copy of this supposedly real viral video from many years ago.
دور 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 شايف غفلة غفلة غفلة.
The video begins with what seems to be a view out the front of a car on a desert road at night. As the clip goes on, a white figure slowly makes its way into the shot.
Looks like it's hunched back.
The person appears hunched over and walks with a very strange gait. They use a cane to keep themselves upright. As they make their way towards the car, the driver appears to get spooked and begins frantically reversing. And just like an animal whose predator instinct has been activated, the strange figure begins chasing the car, eliciting screams from those within it.
Chasing? Yeah, I see cane. It is actually scary.
At some point, the hunched over entity turns away from the car, but the vehicle turns towards them, I guess to keep track of where they are using the headlights, and then this happens. There's a pretty good chance you've seen this clip before. When it comes to creepy and unexplained videos on YouTube, this one's been passed around a lot over the years. The most popular upload of it currently has more than 3 million views. Its title reads, Saudi Arabia Police Encounter a Real Witch. While this version may have been put up on YouTube in October 2017, it most certainly isn't the earliest known upload. In fact, this video has a very strange history on the internet. When you start digging into the origins of this clip, you'll notice that it's very difficult to put together any sort of concrete story behind it, even with a detail as simple as the country it was filmed in. While the most popular upload says it was filmed in Saudi Arabia, several other versions say it was filmed in different cities in India.
I mean, they're speaking, so they just tell the language.
This upload says it was filmed in Bhutan. The British tabloid The Daily Star wrote an article in 2016 saying that the video was filmed in India, while the Huffington Post had wrote a different article a year earlier stating that the video was filmed in Lancashire in the UK. You know, the famous deserts of Lancashire.
Okay.
None of this speculation ultimately matters though, because the voices in the video are speaking Arabic, and the clip does appear to be filmed in some sort of desert-like place, so I think we can assume that it was at least filmed in an Arabic country. But there is another piece of evidence to support that it could have been filmed specifically in Saudi Arabia. Despite the conservative nature of Islam, belief in the supernatural is actually somewhat common in Muslim culture. Witches and jinns are not fictional concepts to many Arab people in the Middle East, they're simply a fact of life.
Surprised.
So much so that in 2009, the Saudi Arabian government formally organized an anti-witchcraft unit to deal with the threats posed by black magic to the public.
What?
This has more or less caused a modern-day witch hunt in the country, with 118 people arrested on charges of witchcraft in 2009 alone. By 2011, the unit...
What does it even mean? Like, what do they look for that you're doing witchcraft? What does that even mean?
It had brought about almost 600 arrests related to witchcraft and black magic, which mostly targeted foreign workers from Africa and other parts of Asia. Is it possible that this really is a clip of 2 Saudi police officers investigating a potential witch? Personally, I think this video is fake. Like I said earlier, it's almost a carbon copy of these Arab ghost
Do you even need to say that? I mean, thanks dude, yeah. Obviously it's fake.
hunting videos that will become popular only a couple years later. Both are vertical videos taken in the desert at night, approaching some strange ghostly figure. I think this witch video is merely the prototype for all the Arab ghost hunting videos that came after it. In terms of the origins of this clip, a user on Reddit was able to find the oldest upload on YouTube, which is from December 2014, but I don't think this is the original version of this video. According to this comment I found on Reddit, this clip was very popular quite a while ago in Saudi Arabia, but it found its way between people not on YouTube, but in WhatsApp groups. This would explain the lack of a single origin for this video. There just simply isn't one on the surface internet. This commenter also says his personal theory is that this video shows us a mentally ill Bedouin person accidentally spooking the people filming in the car. The Bedouin are a group of Arab tribes that live a traditional nomadic lifestyle. This would explain not only the strange clothes the supposed witch in the video is wearing, but also why they're in the desert at night in the first place. I think this is a plausible theory, but I do personally think the entire thing is fake, just like the Arab ghost hunting videos. This video going viral purely through being shared around private groups is not something that really happens anymore. But it was very common back in the early days of Web 2.0, and it's why a lot of older creepy videos have such dubious origins. There just isn't a single point of entry in the surface web someone can point to and say, that's where this video comes from. Our final topic for today is a video we've already discussed in the past on this channel, and is one that has mysterious origins for similar reasons, and we're going to uncover some new information about it today. Back in the summer of 2024, I wanted to make a video about the scary things you could find on YouTube that had very little views. YouTube's unwatched horrors. When coming up with an intro for that video, I wanted to talk about a personal experience I had stumbling across something terrifying on YouTube that felt like nobody else had seen. After all, horror is greatly intensified when it's felt in isolation. Adding context, a backstory, and sharing in the experience with others just lessens the overall feeling of unease. The video I chose to go with was Kuyang Dayak. Yeah, it wasn't unwatched by a long shot, but back when I first saw it in 2013, it wasn't a commonly passed around video, and there was next to no information about it online. Most of the comments were written in Indonesian, and it truly felt like I clicked on something that I shouldn't have, which was the feeling I wanted to capture. As we talked about unwatched horrors, and as other YouTubers have also uncovered, Kuyang Dayak depicts a sort of sideshow attraction that's common in Pakistan. A man sticks his head through a box to make it look like he has the body of a stuffed fox, and onlookers pay to have a conversation with him. He acts as a sort of fortune teller. The most popular of these fortune tellers is known as Mumtaz Begum, and almost all the footage online you'll find of these strange sideshows are specifically showing you this fortune teller.
I don't know what to say. Different culture are interesting. how does someone even come up with that in the first place? Does it, and it becomes a thing that many people do.
And that leaves us with a question. Where does this clip in particular come from? Because this is one of the only videos I could find online of one of these fortune tellers that is not Mumtaz Begum. And on top of that, the man or creature in Kuyan Dayak appears to be in some sort of state of distress. Its lips move in an unnatural manner and it makes no sound. It's a lot more unsettling looking than Mumtaz Begum.
Yeah.
Okay,
144 quality.
At the end of YouTube's Unwatched Horrors, I told you guys that I was actually able to uncover some information about Kuyan Dayak that nobody else had previously uncovered. Mostly that there was a much earlier and much more viral upload of it that was put up on YouTube all the way back in 2007. This version has 24 million views, and it in turn links back to this Indonesian news website which contains an article discussing the video. The article says that the video actually depicts a disobedient child that has been transformed into an awful creature. But more importantly for our story, it says that the incident occurred in an Arab country. In YouTube's Unwatched Horrors, I had said that even this 2007 upload was probably not the original version because it contains music, whereas Kuyan Dayak seems to contain the original audio, which means it must have been taken from a different upload. Is there a chance that the true and possibly Arabic origin to Kuyan Dayak is out there somewhere in some forgotten corner of the internet? After a bit of digging, I was able to find a slightly earlier upload on YouTube. This one is from February 2007, and wouldn't you know it, both the title and the audio in the video are in Arabic. In fact, the audio here is completely different than Kuyan Dayak. It would appear that Chibonk182, the channel that uploaded Kuyan Dayak, dubbed his own audio into this video for whatever reason. The title of this upload when translated into English reads, "A Girl Who Turns Into an Animal." The audio in the video makes a lot more sense in this version. It's obviously in Arabic, and the creature isn't just moving its lips with no sound coming out, it was actually talking all along.
Salam alaikum.
I turned on auto-translated captions to get an idea of the conversation that was happening, which appears to be pretty normal for this sort of sideshow attraction. The cameraman and his friends are basically just asking the creature why it's so strange. This upload has 13 million views, and I think it's safe to say that this is the true origin for Kuyan Dayak, at least on the surface web. I wouldn't be surprised if this video was originally passed around privately using Bluetooth file sharing on flip phones or whatever other low-tech techniques for passing around videos existed back then.
Absolutely.
Searching the title on Google, I was able to find some pretty old posts on some Arabic forums, but nothing suggesting that there's an earlier upload out there. I think we can finally call this case closed for Kuyan Dayak. I hope you guys enjoyed today's exploration into some of the...
Okay, well, interesting. I don't really watch again any channel that do like fake or investigation, right? I used to a little bit, but these days I don't. But maybe it could be fun for like a stream or something. If any of you have like any channel like that to recommend, maybe I could do it, you know. Okay, interesting video, but yeah, I will leave it at that for today. I was gonna watch one more, but I feel like I've had my dose of like scary videos or true crimes especially. Again, next time maybe I'll try to make a less depressing playlist, more focused on stuff like this, you know, like less true crime if I can. Because, you know, true crime is getting quite depressing. Or maybe I'll do horror movie reaction. If anyone has a suggestion, don't hesitate. Anyway, like, subscribe, comment, check out the original videos, and I'll see you guys next time. ExoticBankai. See you.